you most likely within the next day or so. So if you want to share it with colleagues on campus or review some of the things that Dr. Woosley is going to review today, you are more than happy to do so. So I will turn this over now to Dr. Woosley, who will walk us through the presentation. And thanks, everyone, for coming in.
Thanks, Lisa. Lisa, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Good deal. Okay. This is Sherry. Thank you guys so much for coming. We're talking about resident assistants or student staff in the residence halls. I want to do a couple of quick kind of shout outs or, thank yous to Josh and Kelly Lowry from Eastern Illinois. We worked together on a similar kind of proposal and presentation at ACPA. And then also a thank you to Dan Flowers, one of our research analysts who helped with some of the data analysis. And I just want to acknowledge their contributions to what we're going to be talking about. And I want you to know that this really is kind of a data talk, a research talk. And the reason is because we've got some really interesting national data that should help provide evidence for some of the things that you know and maybe show you some things that, I don't know, maybe you don't know. All right, hold on one second. There's my screen. All right, here's our plan for today. And by the way, although I said it was a data research talk, I am going to keep this in English, not do it in statisticianese or whatever that is. And what I want to talk about is I want to talk about what evidence do we have that student staff performance matters, and do we have evidence to that? I think anybody who's worked in the residence halls probably believes that to be true. That's why we spend so much time recruiting, retaining, training our student staff and working with them. But I want to look at the data side of things. And then once we've kind of addressed that bigger question of what evidence do we have that they matter, then which of their behaviors link to their overall performance? And as sort of a follow-up of which factors are related to their satisfaction within the position. And I'm going to use 2 national assessments to do this conversation. But essentially, the reason that we're doing this kind of a research talk is for practical purposes. If we can show that student staff are important and provide evidence, then the natural next step is we want to reinforce their effectiveness and reinforce their job satisfaction, their engagement, their likelihood of staying in these positions or recruiting other good people into these positions. And those are practical things. We want them to do the best that they can do to improve our residence life programs. So that's the plan. We're going to start with the first study, which is from the resident perspective, the people who live in the residence halls. What do they think, know, and see in terms of student staff, and what information does that give us? We're going to be using the ACUHO-I EBI Resident Assessment. We're going to be using last year's data because that's the most recent full year of data I have. It's 315,000 plus respondents on the survey from 282 different institutions around the country. So think about that. I mean, you're talking about a variety of res life programs, a variety of student staff roles and positions, and some real kind of robust data. We're going to do 3 research questions. All researchers have to have research questions, right? So we're going to talk about to what extent is satisfaction with the staff. So from the resident perspective, if I'm satisfied with my student staff and their performance, does that link to how I view my experiences in the residence halls and the outcomes that I experience in the residence halls? That's the big question, sort of from the highest level of, do student staff matter? If they matter, then the resident perceptions of their performance should be linked with other outcomes that are desirable. Okay? The second question is about those specific staff behaviors that are linked from the resident perspective with their overall performance. So if I believe they're effective, what behaviors are linked that I also see? Okay? And then the third one is, we thought we'd do just a little digging below the surface of if we see those kinds of relationships, do those relationships transcend some different specific subpopulations of residents? We're going to look at some subpopulations that residence halls can be divided into. We're going to look at, males compared to females, because many campuses will have a male hall or a female hall. And then sort of that 3 research questions in English at the bottom for you. Basically, do the student staff matter? And if so, which of their behaviors matter? And is that true for all residents, or is it more true for certain subpopulations? So you ready for some data? What we're going to look at is if you're familiar with the EBI ACUHO-I Resident Assessment, you know that there is a variety of factors, and we're going to focus our attention on a few. And we're going to focus, obviously, on the satisfaction with student staff, which is kind of like their job performance. There's an overall question, how satisfied are you with them? And then there's those specific behaviors. And then we're going to look at also those other residence hall outcomes that tend to be things that residence halls are trying to accomplish, or things that are important to an effective program in the residence halls. So we'll look at satisfaction with some different things. We'll look at some of the learning outcome factors that we are aiming for our residents to achieve, and we're going to look at some climate, like some community kinds of factors. In terms of study methodology, for the people that love research, here you go. We're going to do correlations. And I picked correlations because they're pretty simple for both researchers and non-researchers to understand, but they also test for not only the significance of the relationships, they also test for the strength of those relationships. And correlations are going to run, typically they would run like -1 to +1. All of our correlations are positive relationships. If one factor is higher, then the other factor is also higher. So ours are going to run from 0 to 1. The closer to 1 that correlation is, the more likely it is linked, and the stronger that relationship is. And then we use some Fisher's transformations to test when we get to those subpopulation comparisons. We wanted to see if one correlation, one relationship is significantly stronger than the other, and that's the procedure we used. And again, thanks to Dan for helping with this stuff. Whew, okay, I thought I should give you an overall sort of data point to start with. This is the overall staff performance. So, what do the residents think about their student staff? And you should notice that it's absolutely skewed to the right. In general, residents are very satisfied with their student staff and the student staff performance. You can see the majority of students actually say 7 on this 7-point scale. You have very few that are dissatisfied. So when we talk about the relationships as we move through and we look at correlations, keep in mind that many times we're talking about positive and satisfied kinds of relationships. If I'm satisfied here, I'm also satisfied somewhere else. And that it's not many people sitting in the dissatisfied kinds of categories. All right, so let's go to the first question I told you, which is what kinds of relationships do we see between satisfaction with the hall staff and other kinds of residence hall outcomes? Now, I'm going to show you a big chart, and let's talk through it, because at some level I feel like I'm throwing a lot of numbers at you, and this isn't actually complicated as it might look at first glance. Satisfaction with student staff is related to all 10 of these factors, okay? So think about it. If I'm happy with my student staff, if I think that they're doing a really good job, I am likely to be happy with hall and apartment programming. I'm likely to be happy with the services provided by my residence hall. I'm also likely to be happy with the room assignment and change process, the sense of community, the safety. You get the idea. I put these in order of the correlations, so the strongest relationships are at the top, the weakest relationships are at the bottom, but note that every single one of these is statistically significant, in part because of the size of the sample, but also these relationships are, they sort of range from medium to fairly strong. Now, if you want to understand, if you're not familiar with our survey, I want to talk a little bit about what underlies these factors so that you know kind of what we're talking about. Hall programming, I think, is exactly what most people would expect. If I'm satisfied with hall programming, I'm satisfied with the different types of programs. I'm satisfied with the variety and the quality of programs. And I think most of us would understand that being satisfied with student staff should be linked with being satisfied with hall programs. The more interesting one to me is the second one, is that if I'm satisfied with student staff, I'm also satisfied with very concrete services that may or may not have anything to do with my student staff. Internet connections, laundry, study facilities, Information desk services. Now I realize on some campuses, information desk services might be something that your student staff does. But I don't think most student staff do internet or laundry. Man, I wish they did laundry. But think about it. Student staff may be the ones dealing with explanations, helping people get answers or get solutions to problems related to these services. So the fact that these are tightly linked, or at least strongly linked, is a good sign, I think. Room assignment is the flexibility of the room change, the room assignment process, and this may be another case where student staff are helping to explain, describe, helping students to navigate. And the fact that I'm satisfied with my student staff means I'm also satisfied with this process seems to indicate that there may be a relationship there. And then the fourth one I showed you, a sense of community. And this, I think, is pretty intuitive. The extent to which I trust others, I feel accepted by others, that student staff may be creating or help to facilitate that community piece. So what I would say is, given that I've given you the top 10 correlations, and look at the variety of things that are related to student staff performance, I think we have some pretty strong evidence of the importance of student staff for our residents and for their experience in the halls. Okay? So that was our first research question. If you remember, our second research question was, if there's evidence that this is important, then what do we know about specific behaviors of our student staff that might relate to their overall performance? So let me show you what we know. What I'm showing you, oh, I think we went there. Hold on. Oh, I'm sorry. We need to do a little bit of breakdown first. So let's look at the relationship of student staff to outcomes for different subpopulations. And I wanted to do this in part because I know we have sometimes halls that are either designated for first years or designated for upperclassmen, or we have halls that naturally attract certain subpopulations. And we also talk to sometimes our staff about the needs of those students. And I wanted you to see that, first of all, these are just the top 5 correlations in this case. All of these relationships are also statistically significant. Again, we have a pretty good sample size, so that helps. What the asterisks are showing you where one relationship is stronger than the other. And I want you to notice that in every case there's a significant difference. The relationship is stronger for seniors. So how a senior views that staff member is more strongly related to how they view hall programming. How they view the services is more strongly related to how they view the student staff. So the importance of student staff for these groups may be even more so. Room assignment, maybe more seniors have gone through the room assignment process. Maybe they're just seeing those relationships in tighter ways than our first years. Okay? Let me do one other kind of comparison piece. This is a female to male comparison. And we wanted to do this again because you might have student staff dealing with different populations. And again, every one of these relationships is statistically significant and is sort of medium to strong. Where you see some differences is the room assignment and change process. Males see that as more tightly linked to their staff performance. And then safety and security. And safety and security may be a fact that females see it less tightly linked with student staff. I don't know. Okay. All right, now let's go back to the other question, our second research question, which is, all right, we know that student staff performance and perceptions of that performance are linked to outcomes. Now the question is, which behaviors are linked to how we see the overall student staff? And again, I've given you quite a few of them. These are from our student staff kind of effectiveness job scale. But this is how the residents view student staff. And what we did is we took each of these questions and linked it and correlated it with overall performance. And I've put them in the order of the strength of the relationships. Again, all significant. Large sample size helps with that. But think about it. How I view my student staff members' overall performance is tightly, super strongly linked. How's that for adjectives? To gaining your respect, to helping with a problem, to communicating rules and regulations. treating everyone fairly. Look at how strong these relationships are, not surprising since that's kind of why we use it as a factor, but also look at the order of them. The way I feel about student staff is more tightly linked with whether they gain my respect, help me with a problem, or communicate rules than it is with how I view them in terms of organizing staff programs and activities. Okay? But again, lots of behaviors that we know are related to their perceptions of their overall performance. Okay. Now let's do the breakdowns that I did before where we do a little bit of comparisons. And let's do first year compared to seniors. This is that same list of behaviors. And what I want you to notice is we once again see that the relationships are stronger for seniors. So how a senior views that student staff member is actually more tightly related to whether they think that staff member is communicating rules and regulations, to whether or not they think that staff member is treating everyone fairly, promoting tolerance, even the efforts to get to know you. And I know we talk about over and over again with staff members the importance of getting to know people. This data absolutely reinforces it, but it also reinforces that that is equally, if not more important for our seniors than it is for our first-year students. Okay? Even availability, same kind of thing. Now, the interesting thing, or maybe it's not so interesting, I don't know, is that there were no differences for males and females. So the importance of gaining respect, getting to know me, whatever those things are, it is a strong relationship, it is a significant relationship, but it is not more important to males or to females, it's equally important. Okay? So, whew, that was study number 1. It's not bad in 15, 20 minutes. Now what I want to do is take on study number 2. This one's a little bit shorter, so that way we'll get done in time. But this is from the RA perspective. So in this case, we're going to be using the ACUHO-I EBI staff assessment. This is of student staff. There is an overall program effectiveness factor. This is kind of the equivalent, frankly, of a job satisfaction measure because it asks student staff members if they, or to what extent, the student staff experience has been a positive learning experience. Are they satisfied with it? Would they recommend it? It kind of is job satisfaction. How effective or what do they think of this experience overall? We also ask a student staff member about their own learning, and we ask them about specific job characteristics so that we can do some analysis that you'll see in just a bit. I put together 3 years of data for this because I wanted a kind of a bigger sample. This way we got more than 12,000 students. We got 49 different institutions. Again, a variety of different student staff experiences are probably represented in the 49 institutions. And what we wanted to do was really look at what is related to student staff job satisfaction. If they're important, if we understand what they need to do, then we also need to understand what is going to keep them satisfied and engaged in the position and help us recruit new ones, retain the good ones. So we're going to look at what is related to their job satisfaction in terms of other outcomes. Are there other things that they get out of the position in addition to sort of job satisfaction? And then also which job characteristics are going to be associated with higher levels of satisfaction. Here's sort of that overall picture. How satisfied are they? The majority of them are moderately or very satisfied, easily. Again, we have a nice skew to the left, and you can see that. We don't have very many student staff members who really are very dissatisfied with the position. So we're going to be talking more on the positive end. This is the relationship of job satisfaction to outcomes, and particularly learning outcomes. So if I think that this position, I'm satisfied with this position, I'd recommend it to friends, chances are I also believe that the position contributed to my learning in a variety of ways. All of these relationships are significant and they are strong. So let me give you a little bit of the underlying piece. Personal competence, I think, is one of those phrases that you need to see the questions underneath it. And particularly if you look at some of the questions I've given you, this really is about competence, but also job engagement. It's a sense of ownership of the department mission, confidence to assume greater responsibility, and understanding your contribution to the organization. So we would absolutely want job satisfaction to be linked to this sort of job engagement piece that you see. And it's the strongest relationship. But in addition to that sort of personal competence in the position, students are also gaining self-knowledge. If I'm satisfied in the position, I also believe this position is enhancing my self-confidence, my communication skills, and there's a few others in the factor. And then I think you get the hang of empathy, diverse interactions, and collaboration with a staff team. So clearly, if I'm happy in this position, if I think it has value, I also think it is contributing to my learning. Isn't that exciting? Now, when we look at the job characteristics that relate to student staff and how they feel about the position, all of these job characteristics are significantly related, and these relationships are really pretty strong. So the job demands, the types of training, the job expectations, and let's look at what's underneath these, because that'll help you a little bit. Oh, let's see. There we go. Nope, maybe not. There we go. Okay. Job demands, I think, are kind of what you would think. They're the number of hours worked. My ability to balance this job with academics. It's the extent to which this job is kind of demanding. So if I'm happy with the level of demand, then I'm also probably pretty happy with the position. In terms of types of training, this is where student staff are asked to assess the effectiveness of staff meetings, pre-service training, and other types. So think about it. If I believe my staff meetings are effective, then I am happier in this position. Okay, they're linked. And we're going to come back to the training issue in just a second. But think about this job expectations one. The extent to which the clear expectations were established in terms of a variety of things is linked, and significantly strongly linked, to how happy I am in the position. If you think about today's students, this is a clear indicator that they're not going to like ambiguity around their position, at least not in terms of what they're supposed to be doing. Okay? And then if you go back to that training issue, the training factor versus the types of training is the degree to which training, no matter what method it came in, provided me the skills to be successful, to maintain personal behavior standards, plan activities, to do the things I needed to do in this position. So think about that, and then even think about the sort of next ones, supervisor supporting relationship. There's a manager piece underneath it. If you look at the job characteristics that relate to job satisfaction, they are things that we focus on anyway. This is reinforcing the communications that need to happen with the students. It's reinforcing the types of training and the ongoing training and the areas that need to be done, okay, to make these students successful and happy in these positions. So let's do a quick wrap-up of all the stuff that we've kind of talked about, because I want to make sure that this isn't just tables of data. Okay? So from study one, we learned that specific staff behaviors, gaining respect, helping with problems, those kinds of things, are linked to overall staff performance. Okay? So the extent to which they do those things is going to be linked to their overall staff performance, and that their staff performance is related to resident outcomes and to the very things that we're trying to accomplish in residence life programs. Not only just the student satisfaction with a variety of things, but also the climate, the learning outcomes, and the overall resident satisfaction. From study two, we learned that job satisfaction is linked to learning for our student staff, and that there are specific characteristics that are linked to their overall job satisfaction. And so when you think about it, I think we've got some pretty good evidence, at least at the national level, that student staff performance is important, okay? Because it's linked to all those other outcomes, it provides confidence that that is important to the effectiveness of our residence life programs. We've also got some clear information about specific behaviors that are linked to our student staff performance. And we have information about job characteristics that are going to be linked to their overall experience, therefore their engagement and their success in these positions. And the national data is pretty clear. There's not a lot of ambiguity. Clearly, even when we broke some things down into subpopulations, there's not a lot of ambiguity here at all. And I guess the final sort of question for you all is, do you know this on your campus? Now, I have to say, at least as I looked through all of this information and was thinking about it, I think intuitively, professional wisdom, professional gut, we know all of these things. We know student staff is important. We know there are specific behaviors. Those are the types of things that we train. We know job characteristics are important. That's why we train. But I would say, do you have data about these things on your campus that you can share with other people so that you can have that same kind of conversation that isn't just around kind of professional wisdom? Okay. A couple quick wrap-up things for you. Obviously, our organization, EBI, is dedicated to improving the quality of the college experience. And we do that by helping colleges and universities, okay? And we do that not only through our projects, but also through our educational webinars like the one that we just kind of went through quickly. And we have a couple of big projects. We have MapWorks, and then we have these national benchmarking studies that are truly rooted in accreditation and professional standards. I think that you've seen that the Residence Life one is rooted on what we know about the Residence Life experience and programs. Here's a list of some of the benchmarking assessments. And I highlighted the one in yellow we've been talking about. But actually, there's a number of different Res Life studies. You've seen two. You've seen the resident assessment. You've seen student staff. There are others. And I would encourage you that if you want more information, that you find, either call us, find us on the website. We have other food for thought webinars, ones that are specific for housing and Res Life, other ones that are more general about assessment, and lots of different things. If you want information about the Res Life assessments, the ones we've been talking about, I've given you Glenn Skaggs' his email address and his phone number. I'm sure he can help you kind of think through things, talk about things, whatever you need to do. But we would really encourage you, because our mission is to improve the lives of students, we would encourage you to invest your time, energy, and resources in programs and assessments that have the proven impact to make a difference in the lives of students. That way you make us successful at the same time that you're making you successful. Whew. I think, Lisa, I managed to pull that off in 27, 28 minutes.
You did. You did. But for all those attending today, I know, sharing did go quickly in the interest of your time. And again, we hold these over the lunch hour for most folks, except if you're out in the West Coast, so to hopefully maximize attendance. But if you have questions based upon the information you saw today, you can feel free to follow up with me, and I can get that information over to Sherry. As I mentioned before, I'll also be sending out a link to this recorded presentation to all those who registered for today's webinar. Thank you again for attending. We appreciate you spending some time with us today. Hopefully you found this information insightful and can take it back and use it on your campuses. Thanks again.